Universal does not keep its rides forever. Across its parks in Florida, Hollywood, and Japan, the company has spent fortunes building attractions and then quietly erased them. A shark ride that cost $45 million, a time travel simulator that cost $40, a tornado that cost $16, built, opened, and gone. Some were torn down in a single night. A few were simply left standing, dark and rotting, in the middle of parks full of people who walked right past them. There is a theater that sat empty and decaying for 8 years. A television studio with a giant green geyser out front, its sound stages abandoned behind locked doors. And a 30-foot King Kong that lunged at your tram for 22 years until a fire burned the whole thing to the ground and left only his severed hand. That last one is number 1 on this list. Stick with us to the end for it. Welcome to the channel where we dig up the rides the world paid to forget. If you have not subscribed yet, this is the time. Today we are counting down 10 Universal Studios rides that were abandoned and left to rot. Number 10. The Funtastic World of Hanna-Barbera. The ride almost nobody remembers. When Universal Studios Florida opened on June 7, 1990, this was one of its original attractions. A motion simulator that flew you through cartoon worlds, chasing the villain Dick Dastardly to rescue Elroy Jetson, while Yogi Bear and the Flintstones came along for the ride. Here is the thing about cartoon nostalgia. It expires. By 2002, Hanna-Barbera's characters had aged out of relevance, and Universal had moved on to properties tied to current films. The ride closed on October 20th, 2002. But Universal did not gut the building. The simulator hardware was expensive, so they kept the machine and simply reskinned the experience. In April 2003, it became Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast. Years later, the same bay became Despicable Me Minion Mayhem, so the ride itself never really died. It just kept changing costumes. The Flintstones are long gone, but the machine that once flew you through bedrock is still running every day. It just answers to a different boss now. Number 9. Twister, Ride It Out. The storm that outlived its own movie. Universal built a 5-story tornado indoors. Real fire, real water, a roof that collapsed over the audience. To get the physics right, they consulted actual meteorologists. The 2 stars of the 1996 film, Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt, appeared in the pre-show to talk about how close they got to the real thing. It opened on May 4th, 1998, in a soundstage that had previously housed a Ghostbusters attraction. The opening was supposed to be March, but a deadly tornado outbreak tore through Central Florida that month, and Universal pushed the date back. The ride cost about $16 million. It ran for 17 years, and then it just faded. The film lost its cultural grip, attendance slid, and in November 2015, Universal closed it for good. A Jimmy Fallon ride took its place, but look closely at the queue that replaced it. Tucked into the windows are Bill Paxton's light blue shirt, a stapler labeled B. Paxton, and an ad for a fake soda called Twister Cola. A quiet little grave, hidden where almost no one looks. Number 8. Earthquake, the Big One. A ride about a disaster that opened as one. When Universal Studios Florida opened in June 1990, this attraction barely worked. It shared design flaws with the park's Jaws ride, and both ran so unreliably that Universal ended up in a lawsuit with the company that built them. That suit was eventually dropped, but for the first few months the ride was so broken that the park handed guests free passes to come back later. The concept itself was strong. Based on the 1974 film, it dropped you into a subway station and then unleashed a simulated 8.3 magnitude earthquake, a collapsing roadway, a runaway gas truck sliding toward you, the whole station flooding. It had started as a set piece on the Hollywood Backlot Tram Tour before Universal expanded it into a full attraction. It limped along, popular enough, for 17 years. Then in November 2007, Universal closed it, kept the subway hardware, and reopened it weeks later as Disaster, a more self-aware version that walked you through how movie effects are made. That second life lasted until September 2015, when the whole thing was demolished for a Fast and Furious ride. Only the original entrance survived. 2 films, 2 identities, 1 cursed little subway. It never did run clean. Number 7. Back to the Future, the ride, the future it could not survive. For a generation of visitors, this was universal. You climbed into an 8-seat DeLorean inside a 7-story domed theater and hurtled through dinosaurs, ice ages, and molten lava while Doc Brown shouted directions. It was the purest version of Universal's old promise: ride the movies. The effects were designed with help from Douglas Trumbull, the man behind the visuals in 2001. A Space Odyssey. Christopher Lloyd and Thomas Wilson reprised Doc and Biff for the pre-show. The Florida version opened in 1991. Hollywood followed in 1993. Japan in 2001. For more than 15 years, it was the ride people drove hours to experience. And then the franchise went quiet, and the simulator technology started to show its age. Universal closed the Florida ride in March 2007 and the Hollywood one that September. Both were replaced by the Simpsons ride, which reused the same domed architecture. Another case of Universal keeping the bones and changing the skin. Japan held on the longest. Its DeLorean kept flying until May 31st, 2016. Think about that date. The film sends Marty to the year 2015. The ride about traveling to 2015 outlived the actual year 2015 by 12 months. It spent its final year carrying tourists toward a future that had already come and gone. Number 6. Jurassic Park, the ride in Hollywood. Extinct and then resurrected. This one lived on the lower lot at Universal Studios Hollywood, down at the bottom of the park's long banks of escalators. It opened in 1996, and for the time it was genuinely cutting edge. Hydraulics, robotics, and life-size dinosaurs, some of them standing more than 5 stories tall. It was a water ride, and it soaked you. You drifted through a calm jungle river, the dinosaurs turned hostile, and the tour fell apart around you until a final 84-foot plunge sent the boat screaming down through the dark, with a T-Rex waiting at the bottom. It ran for 22 years. In 2018, Universal announced the end. The final day was Labor Day weekend, September 3rd. The neighboring Jurassic Cove restaurant in the Jurassic Outfitters shop closed alongside it. Fans showed up to ride it one last time and count it down. Then Universal gutted the flume and rebuilt it as Jurassic World, the ride, billed as a complete reimagining of the original. So the dinosaurs did not really go extinct, they were brought back, bigger and louder, under a newer brand. Which, if you think about it, is the exact thing the movie spent 2 hours warning everyone not to do. If you are enjoying this, drop a thumbs up and tell us in the comments which of these lost rides you actually got to experience before it disappeared. We read everyone. We are halfway through now, and the stories only get heavier from here, because the next few were not just closed. Some of them were genuinely left to rot. Number 5. Kongfrontation, the ape still hanging in the dark. Inside a 6-story building at Universal Studios Florida, the company built an entire New York City block. Graffiti on the walls, stock storefronts, a recreated subway, all of it indoors. You boarded a near-exact replica of the Roosevelt Island aerial tram, and somewhere over the East River, a 35-foot King Kong came for you. It opened with the park on June 7, 1990, and it was one of the most popular things there. The whole concept came down from Hollywood, where a King Kong attraction already ran on the studio tram tour. But a 6-story show with a giant animatronic is expensive to run, and Universal wanted that footprint for something new. They announced the closure in August 2002. The final rides happened on September 8th. In its place came Revenge of the Mummy, an indoor coaster that opened in 2004. Here is the detail that stops people cold. When Universal built the mummy inside Kong's old building, they did not remove everything. Ride historians say that if you look up at the right moment, you can still see Kong's old tram tracks suspended from the ceiling. The Mummy ride even hides a golden Kong statue as a tribute. The ape is gone, but ride it today and look up, and a piece of him is still hanging there in the dark, watching the new ride go by. Number 4. Jaws, walled off overnight. This ride was cursed from the start. When Universal Studios Florida opened in 1990, The $45 million shark attraction barely functioned. The animatronics failed so often that Universal took the builders to court, then tore the entire ride down and rebuilt it from scratch. The new version did not reopen until 1993. That second Jaws was beloved. You boarded a tour boat into a New England fishing village called Amity, and a great white the size of a truck stalked you across the lagoon, ending at a dock that exploded into flame. It had problems to the end. In 2005, the rising cost of the petroleum used for its pyrotechnics forced Universal to run it only seasonally for a while. Then, in December 2011, Universal announced that Jaws and the entire town of Amity would close in just over a month to make room for a Harry Potter expansion. Fans were furious. They got one final ride on January 2nd, 2012. At 9 o'clock that night, a skipper named Skip took the last 48 guests out onto the water. By the next morning, the whole town was already walled off. Over the following months, every building was demolished. Universal saved one thing. The hanging shark from the town square, the photo op everyone posed with, was moved a few streets over into the park's San Francisco section. They gave people a month to say goodbye, then erased an entire town before sunrise. The shark is all that is left, still grinning at the tourists who wander past. Number 3. Nickelodeon Studios. The slime geyser that went silent. Out front, there was a geyser. A giant green fountain that erupted on a schedule and shot the network's trademark slime into the Florida sky. Behind it stood a real working television studio, and for a decade it was the beating heart of American childhood. This was not a ride. It was a production facility built into Universal Studios Florida when the park opened on June 7, 1990. Universal wanted Nickelodeon so badly that the original deal reportedly required the network to pay no rent at all. The slime geyser was unveiled that October. Inside, they filmed it all. Double Dare, Clarissa Explains It All. All that. Just over 2,000 episodes taped in front of live audiences of screaming kids. Then the network started moving production to California, and game shows fell out of fashion and the crowds thinned. In 2004, Hurricane Charlie damaged the building, and Universal repainted its iconic blue exterior a flat lime green. Here is the part that lands hardest. In its final stretch, only about 10 people were left to run a single interactive room. The rest of the building, the sound stages, the offices, was simply locked up and left abandoned while the lights stayed on out front. The last tour ran on April 30th, 2005. That date was exact. It was 13 years to the day after the studio buried a time capsule outside Soundstage 18. The geyser was shut off and removed weeks later. The giant orange sign came down the following January. The Soundstage became a Blue Man Group theater. And the time capsule, sealed in 1992, is still not scheduled to be opened until April 30th, 2042. It has already been dug up and moved twice, chasing a network that left, while the building that sealed it quietly died around it. Number 2. The Eighth Voyage of Sinbad. The theater that rotted in plain sight. Most abandoned places hide. They sit behind fences, down dead-end roads, out where nobody goes. This one did the opposite. It sat in the middle of one of the busiest theme parks on Earth, fully visible, dead for nearly 8 years. The Eighth Voyage of Sinbad was a live-action stunt show. Pirates, fire, falls, explosions, seating about 1,700 people. It opened in 1999 as part of a strange and wonderful land at Universal's Islands of Adventure called the Lost Continent. No movie tie-in, no franchise logo. Just myth and ruins and theatrical spectacle, the kind of original idea theme parks rarely build anymore. And the park ate it alive, one piece at a time. First, in 2010, a huge section of the Lost Continent was carved off to build the wizarding world of Harry Potter. Then, in September 2018, the Sinbad show closed after a 19-year run with nothing announced to replace it. Then Poseidon's Fury, the land's walk-through attraction, went dark in 2023. But here is what made it eerie. Universal did not tear the Sinbad Theater down. They just left it. a 1,700-seat building, empty and weathering, sitting in full view of guests walking past every single day. For a while, a talking fountain out front was the only thing in the area still alive. It stayed that way until this spring. In 2026, the machines finally arrived. Aerial photos show a hole punched in the side of the theater and a pile of wreckage where the stage used to be. For 8 years, it was a dead theater inside a living park. This spring, they finally put it out of its misery. Number 1. The King Kong Encounter. The tram rolls forward into the dark. The walls close in, and the daylight behind you disappears. It is warm in here, and the air smells of diesel and something faintly organic, like an animal. Somewhere ahead, helicopter rotors are beating, and red emergency light is strobing off mock New York buildings that rise 3 stories on either side of you. Then the wind hits. A downdraft, hot and rank. They called it banana breath. And out of the smoke comes a hand the size of a car. He is 30 feet tall and weighs 7 tons. He grabs at the tram, the cables shriek, the whole vehicle lurches, and for a few seconds a giant ape is close enough that you can watch his eyes track you. That was the experience. For 22 years, on the studio tour at Universal Studios Hollywood, that was what waited inside the dark. The King Kong Encounter opened on June 14, 1986. The animatronic was one of the most sophisticated ever built. 7 tons of machinery moving like something alive. It was so iconic it turned up in a 1989 movie. People came to the park specifically for it. And then, before dawn on June 1st, 2008, it ended. A worker had been using a blowtorch to warm asphalt shingles on a nearby facade. He left before checking that every spot had cooled. A spark caught. By morning, a 3-alarm fire was tearing through the backlot, sending a black cloud over the Hollywood Hills. One official said it looked like a bomb had gone off. It took 24 hours to put out. The fire destroyed about 3 acres. It took the mock New York and New England streets. It took somewhere between 40 and 50,000 archived film and video copies, and a vault of irreplaceable original Music Master recordings that the world is still mourning. And it took Kong. The entire show building burned. When the smoke cleared and crews went in, they found that almost nothing of the great ape had survived. Almost nothing. One piece made it out. His hand. Universal rebuilt the attraction 2 years later as a 3D experience, and they did something quietly haunting with it. They wrote the real fire into the new ride story. Today, the tram tour shows Kong emerging from the smoke of the very blaze that destroyed him. He spent 22 years reaching for that tram. When it was finally over, the only thing left reaching was his hand. Universal builds worlds and then unbuilds them. Most of these rides were not lost to time. They were business decisions, fires, and bulldozers. For me, the one that stays is the Sinbad Theater. A dead building sitting in plain sight, in a living park, for 8 years. Which of these did you ride before it was gone? Which one did we miss? Tell us in the comments. And if forgotten places are your thing, subscribe. There are more of them than you would ever guess.